Hello, it's Katie from LearnKnowVote.org. Have you ever wondered what all of our amendments say? I can understand why maybe you've never looked up on it because some of the language can be very hard to understand. That's what I'm here for. I'm going to explain every single amendment to our Constitution so far in plain English. Okay, the amendments to the Constitution. There have been 27 so far, and that includes the first 10 amendments, which are the Bill of Rights. The other 17 have been passed over the intervening years, with the most recent one being ratified in 1992. Obviously, I don't expect you to memorize this. It's a lot of information. But if you ever need a refresher, just come back to this video and be sure to recommend it to your friends too. So let's find out what they say. So we're going to start off with the Bill of Rights, which is Amendments 1 through 10. The Bill of Rights covers individual rights that people at the time felt were important enough to be explicitly spelled out instead of just assumed. They were all ratified at the same time in 1791, after the very first Congress met after the Constitution was ratified. The First Amendment. This one's often called the Free Speech Amendment. It prohibits Congress from making laws that establish a national religion or that interfere with the exercise of religion, with free speech and the free press, with the right to peaceably assemble, or with the right of people to petition their government to correct wrongs. So there's a lot more to it than just free speech. The Second Amendment. Now this is a very controversial amendment right now. So instead of getting into the controversy of that, which deserves its own discussion, I'm just going to give the text of the amendment. The Second Amendment says, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." There's been a lot of debate about what those words mean, and again, that deserves its own discussion, so we'll move along for now. The Third Amendment bans the practice of quartering, which is the forced housing and feeding of soldiers in citizen homes during peacetime. This was a common and very unpopular practice before the Revolution, so they wanted to make sure that we didn't have to do that anymore. The Fourth Amendment protects citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. Law enforcement or other officials can't search through or confiscate citizens' personal property. They have to have a legal warrant, and the warrant has to be specific, based on probable cause, and backed up by oath or affirmation. The Fifth Amendment covers the process for trying a person for a capital crime. A citizen has the freedom to not lay the blame on his or herself with their testimony. Citizens cannot be tried twice for the same crime if they've already been cleared, and the government cannot seize land or property for public use without fair repayment. The Sixth Amendment is the Due Process Amendment. It's all about making sure that citizens get fair trials. U.S. citizens are to be provided with a speedy and fair trial by an impartial jury of the state and district where the crime was committed. They also have the right to know what they're being charged with, to see and hear the witnesses that are being called against them, to call their own witnesses in their defense, and to have a lawyer present to represent them. The Seventh Amendment protects the right of trial by jury for certain civil cases tried in federal court. The Eighth Amendment outlaws cruel and unusual punishments, i.e., the punishment has to fit the crime. This includes a ban on ridiculously high bails and fines. The Ninth Amendment is a little weird. It's kind of hard to understand, but it's understood to mean that the Constitution cannot be used to deny citizens of basic or inherent rights that aren't specifically listed in the Constitution. And the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which is the last amendment of the Bill of Rights, says that jobs that are not specifically given to the federal government automatically fall to state and local governments. Those are called reserved powers. Okay, so that's the Bill of Rights. Now we move on to Amendment 11. The 11th Amendment says that the Supreme Court cannot rule in cases where the subjects are citizens of different states or one of the subjects is a citizen of another country. The 12th Amendment updates the practice of the Electoral College to make sure that the election for vice president and president is separate. The Electoral College is pretty hard to understand. I actually have a blog post that I'll link down below that helps explain it really well. It also says that if there isn't a clear majority winner in a presidential election, the House of Representatives would elect the president and the Senate would elect the vice president. The 13th Amendment outlaws slavery. The 14th Amendment grants citizenships to former slaves by stating that citizenship is by birth. The 15th Amendment declares that voting rights will not be denied citizens on the basis of race, color, or condition of previous servitude, which is a fancy way of saying slavery. The 16th Amendment establishes a federal income tax. The 17th Amendment opens up the election of senators to the popular vote. Before that, state legislatures voted for senators. not your average citizen. The 18th Amendment is the Prohibition Amendment. It banned the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors. It banned exporting and importing alcohol as well. The 19th Amendment grants women the right to vote. All right, we're getting there. The 20th Amendment says that if a president is not reelected, their term ends on the 20th of January the following year. It also says that if a congressman or woman is not reelected, then their term ends on January 3rd of the following year. The reason the 20th Amendment happened was because a president would lose the re-election in November, and then their term would go all the way to March of the following year. So there was this really awkward period of 5 months where it's like, I wasn't reelected, but I'm still president. That shortened that significantly. The 21st Amendment is very unique because it repealed the Prohibition Amendment. There has never been an amendment that repealed a previous amendment until the 21st Amendment happened. It's highly unusual, but Prohibition caused so many problems that they were like, we gotta get rid of it. The 22nd Amendment forces a 2-term limit on presidents. Before this amendment, presidents never ran for more than 2 terms out of respect for George Washington, who himself only ran for 2 terms. But Franklin Roosevelt won the presidency for 4 terms in a row. So after that, they decided that let's make the 2-term limit official. The 23rd Amendment gives citizens of Washington, D.C. representation in the Electoral College. Before this amendment, if you lived in Washington, D.C., you could not vote for president. D.C. residents do not have representation in Congress, but now they're entitled to the same number of electors as the least populous state. Right now, that means they get 3 electors. The 24th Amendment outlaws poll taxes. The 25th Amendment describes what happens if the office of the president or the vice president becomes vacant prematurely. The vice president takes over upon the death, disability, or resignation of the president. Also, if the office of the vice president becomes vacant, the president can choose the new vice president if the House of Representatives and the Senate agree. The 26th Amendment states the voting age at 18 years old. And the 27th Amendment. Finally, we have gotten to the end of the list. The 27th Amendment stops congressmen and women from giving themselves guaranteed pay raises. In other words, any pay raises that they vote on cannot go into effect until after the next election. So that's it. Now you know what all the amendments say. If you've watched all of the videos in my Constitution series, then congratulations, you are the real MVP. You are getting yourself ready to vote well. If you haven't seen all the videos in my Constitution series, go to my Constitution in Plain English playlist. It's gonna tell you everything you need to know. Thanks for watching, and be sure to vote well.